Hi, I'm Irene Morning. I'm a trained somatic coach, sexual health counselor, pleasure witch, and bestselling author. And my work is here to help people create the relationships they actually want. Today, in this video, we're going to be talking about non-monogamy and polyamory and what the difference is between those two terms. Okay, so what's non-monogamy? What's polyamory? What's the difference? First and foremost, I want to start this by saying if you are talking to someone who uses any of these terms, please just ask them what they mean. There are so many different uses and interpretations of these words that me giving you a definition right here, right now, doesn't necessarily mean that that's the language that someone else is speaking. It's important to ask people actually what they mean because they might have a totally different understanding than you or me, and that's okay. That said, there are sort of some general understandings that we can bring into the picture here. Non-monogamy, generally speaking, is an umbrella term for different relationship structures or love styles that don't fit into the traditional romantic or sexual monogamous structures. We have umbrella, non-monogamy, polyamory is one of the things. It can be a great term to use if you're exploring different options or you're just experimenting and exploring things that don't fit into the world of monogamy. And that can be things like a certain kink and fetish dynamics, that can include swinger lifestyle, that can mean people who consider themselves monogamish, which is generally speaking having shared sexual experiences with an anchor partner, as well as a whole bunch of other things that we can talk about in a different video. There's lots of things that fit under that umbrella term. It is basically what it sounds, anything that is not monogamous. Polyamory as a relationship structure is one of those things that fits under the umbrella of non-monogamy. When we're talking about polyamory as a relationship structure, what we mean, again, generally speaking, is engaging in multiple serious or loving relationships at the same time, or at least having the capacity to, being open to that in how we're dating, in how we're engaging with partners. I would say that it's different from what we typically think of in the swinging or open relating styles. Polyamory tends to have a little bit more commitment level to those relationships, or at least allows for that possibility. It might mean that I have one serious anchor partner and am seeing a couple other people casually, but I am open to other serious relationships developing. I use air quotes around serious because that's another thing that has a lot of subjectivity. You have to define it for yourself and you have to understand what other people mean by it. Now, here's where it gets a little bit tricky. What I think is important to understand about polyamory, or the concept of being polyamorous, is that it's a relationship structure, but it can also be an identity. And that can be a both and or an either or. What do I mean by that? So what I just broke down in the relationship structure is the way that the structure works. When we talk about polyamorous as an identity, we're talking more about the feeling of knowing intuitively, internally, that I have the capacity to be in loving relationship, to be in love with multiple people at once. There are some people who feel like that really is a core part of their identity. I can be both in my identity as polyamorous and in my structure polyamorous, or I can be one or the other. Someone might be engaging in a polyamorous structure who doesn't feel that they are polyamorous as a core part of their ongoing identity. And vice versa, someone who feels that being polyamorous is just an elemental part of who they are might actually be in a committed monogamous relationship for any number of reasons. And that's okay. Again, always just ask people what they mean. And to really throw a twist at you, one of the ways of being polyamorous as an identity thinks about polyamory beyond the realm of romantic and sexual partners. For some people, being polyamorous is about breaking down society's hierarchical structure of how we value relationships. The majority of society that we've been conditioned into puts emphasis on your romantic and sexual partnerships. They get more energy, they get more time, they get all kinds of priority in how your energy gets spent. And for some people, being polyamorous is about breaking that down and putting friends, family, romantic and sexual partners more on a similar level with each other. So their time and energy goes into different types of relationships with a little bit more equity. I can be internally polyamorous and in my relationship structure not polyamorous, or I can be polyamorous in my relationship structure but not feel that it's a core part of who I am throughout my life. I feel that's an important distinction to make, because when I see a lot of the online content around polyamory and what it means to be polyamorous, I get a sense that there's a little bit of, you don't count as polyamorous unless you've actually lived the reality of having multiple partners and multiple relationships at once. I'll tell you as a sexuality educator that I'm just not really here for that. The same way that you can know internally that you are queer, and that has nothing to do with how much lived experience you have or sexual experience you have with queer sex or queer experiences, but you still are the authority on your internal experience that you are queer, works the same way for polyamory. You can know internally that you are polyamorous and not have yet had the experience of having multiple partners. There's a breakdown of the explanation. If you have any more questions, comments, whatever, please leave it in the comment section below.